Imagine you are standing ankle-deep in dust and blood. The sun is white-hot above your head. Your mouth tastes like copper. In front of you, a Mongol general, one of the men who burned half the world, has just been dragged off his horse. His helmet is ripped away. His eyes are wide, confused, almost offended. And then the sword comes down. His head hits the ground with a sound that doesn't echo. Because the world is holding its breath. Here is the impossible question. How did the one army that had never lost finally break? You think you already know this story. You don't. Because what destroyed the Mongol horde at Ain Jalut wasn't luck. It wasn't numbers. And it wasn't bravery alone. It was something darker. Something deliberate. Something so shocking that even the victors barely spoke about it afterward. Stay with me. Because in the next hour, you're going to watch the unstoppable machine of Mongol warfare walk straight into a trap designed not just to kill them, but to humiliate them. And before this is over, you will understand why one forgotten battlefield in the hills of Palestine quietly changed the fate of the entire world. Now listen carefully. You're about to see 5 moments that sound impossible, but all happened. First, a slave with nothing to lose becomes the most dangerous man on earth. Second, a Mongol army marches west expecting another easy massacre, and doesn't realize it has already crossed the point of no return. Third, a fake retreat so convincing that even veteran Mongol commanders fall for it. Fourth, a battlefield so loud with steel and screaming horses that men later said it felt like the earth itself was tearing apart. And finally, a single execution that sends a message louder than any army ever could. You think it can't get worse? Wait. Because to understand Ain Jalut, you have to understand the nightmare that came before it. Picture the Mongols not as an army, but as a natural disaster. They don't negotiate. They don't retreat. They don't forgive. Cities don't fall to them. Cities disappear. When the Mongols come, walls mean nothing. Rivers don't protect you. Deserts don't slow them down. Prayer doesn't save you. From China to Persia, from the steppes to the gates of the Islamic world, the Mongols move like a blade across the map. And behind them, silence. If you surrendered immediately, maybe, you lived. If you resisted, they killed everyone. Men, women, children, animals. Sometimes they piled skulls into pyramids so high you could see them from miles away. This isn't exaggeration. This is policy. One Persian chronicler wrote that after a Mongol sack, the land wept blood instead of rain. Another said the stench of death hung in the air for months. Now here's the part that should terrify you. By the year 1260, the Mongols have never lost a major battle. Not one. Generals rise and die without ever seeing defeat. And now they are coming for the heart of the Middle East. Baghdad has already fallen. Pause there for a moment. Baghdad. One of the greatest cities on earth. The center of learning, culture, science, and wealth. When the Mongols take it, they don't just conquer it. They erase it. Libraries are thrown into the river until the water turns black with ink. Scholars are slaughtered in the streets. The Caliph, once the most powerful man in Islam, is rolled up in a carpet and trampled to death by horses. Why? Because Mongol law forbids royal blood from touching the ground. That's how confident they are. That's how untouchable they feel. After Baghdad, Syria collapses like wet paper. Aleppo. Damascus. City after city opens its gates or burns. And now the Mongols stand at the edge of Egypt. Egypt. The last real power left in the Islamic world. If Egypt falls, nothing stops the Mongols from pushing into North Africa, or even Europe from the south. This is the moment where history feels inevitable. You would expect Egypt to panic, to surrender, to pray. Instead, something very strange happens. The defense of the Islamic world falls not to kings, not to noble bloodlines, but to slaves. They are called the Mamluks, purchased as boys, torn from their homes, trained from childhood to kill without hesitation. Their lives are discipline, pain, and obedience. They are beaten, starved, broken, and then reforged into living weapons. And at their head stands a man who should not exist. His name is Qutuz. As a child, Qutuz watches his family butchered by Mongols. He is dragged away in chains. Sold. Resold. Beaten so badly his face is permanently scarred. He grows up knowing one truth. The Mongols took everything from him. By the time he rises through the Mamluk ranks, Egypt is already trembling. Mongol envoys arrive in Cairo. They bring no offers. No compromises. They bring a letter. It says, in essence, "We are the punishment of God. Submit, or you will be annihilated." Most rulers would kneel. Qutuz does something else. He executes the envoys. Publicly. Their heads are nailed to the gates of Cairo. This is not bravery. This is suicide, unless you have a plan. And Qutuz does. But here's where the despair deepens. The Mongol army approaching Egypt is led by Kitbuka. Kitbuka is not just any general. He is a veteran. A Christian Mongol commander known for brutality and absolute confidence. He has crushed armies larger than his own without blinking. And worse. The Mongols believe Egypt will fall like everything else. They split their forces. They don't even bring the full army. Let that sink in. They think so little of their enemy, they don't bother. Now pause. Because this is where most histories rush ahead. But I want you to sit in this moment. You are a Mamluk soldier. You know what the Mongols do to prisoners. You know their reputation. You have seen refugees with hollow eyes tell stories of cities erased. You are outnumbered. Outmatched. Facing an enemy that has never been beaten. And your leaders are former slaves, facing the greatest war machine on earth. This is not heroic yet. This is terrifying. And this is where another man enters the story. Baybars. If Qutuz is rage held together by iron discipline, Baybars is controlled violence. He is tall. Scarred. One eye slightly misaligned from an old injury. He smiles rarely. But when he does, it makes men uncomfortable. Baybars has studied the Mongols for years. Their tactics. Their habits. Their arrogance. He knows one thing that almost no one else understands. The Mongols are not invincible. They are predictable. But knowing that, and proving it on a battlefield, are very different things. Now imagine this. The Mongols ride into Palestine, confident, relaxed, almost bored. They have done this 100 times. The land is dry. The valleys are open. Perfect for cavalry. Perfect for Mongols. And then, Mamluk scouts appear. They attack. They retreat. They attack again. Always just close enough to provoke. Always just far enough to escape. Kitbuka smiles. This is familiar. This is how Mongols win. You chase. You surround. You destroy. So he orders the pursuit. And the Mongols ride forward. This is the moment everything hinges on. Because what Baybars is about to do is insane. Even other Mamluks think it's madness. He is about to use the Mongols' greatest weapon, against them. But if he's wrong, if even one timing is off, the Mamluk army will be annihilated in minutes. You think it can't get more tense than this? It can. Because hidden just beyond the hills of Ain Jalut, thousands of Mamluk soldiers are holding their breath. And what happens next will either end Mongol dominance forever, or erase Egypt from the map. Stay with me. Because the first clash is coming. And when steel finally meets steel, even the Mongols will realize, too late, that something is very, very wrong. The Mongols ride faster. Dust rises behind their horses like a living wall. Leather creaks. Boughs hum softly as arrows are tested, flexed, kissed by fingers that have killed thousands. To Kitbuka, this feels familiar. Comforting, even. Ahead of him, the Mamluk cavalry breaks again. They turn. They flee. They run. Exactly as expected. You have to understand something about Mongol psychology here. For decades, The Mongols have trained the world to respond the same way every time. Panic, collapse, flight. Enemies always run. And the Mongols always chase. Because the chase is where the killing happens. Kitbuka believes this is already over. But what you don't see yet, what he doesn't see yet, is that this retreat is wrong. It's too clean. Too controlled. Too deliberate. Baybars is riding at the front of the fleeing force. His horse is lathered with sweat. His jaw is clenched so tight it hurts. Every instinct in his body is screaming danger. Because he knows what happens if the Mongols catch them too soon. If they close the distance before the valley. If the timing breaks. If panic spreads. There will be no second chance. Behind Baybars, his men are doing something almost impossible. They are pretending to be afraid. Not the wild, desperate fear of a routed army. But measured fear. Convincing fear. They let their lines loosen. They shout. They glance back just often enough. This is theater. Deadly theater. And it has to fool the best cavalry commanders in human history. Kitbuka orders his horns sounded. Advance. Press harder. Break them. The Mongol formation stretches. This is the moment Baybars has been waiting for. The Valley of Ain Jalut opens ahead, a shallow basin surrounded by low hills and scrub. It looks harmless. It is not. Hidden behind those hills are thousands of Mamluk soldiers. Heavy cavalry. Archers. Reserves holding position so tight their legs cramp. Kutuz is there. Watching. Waiting. He has one hand gripping the reins. The other wrapped around the hilt of his sword so hard his knuckles are white. If Baybars misjudges the distance. If Kitbuka hesitates. If anything breaks. Egypt dies here. The Mongols surge into the valley. And suddenly, Baybars turns. His men turn with him. Not fully. Not to attack. Just enough to fire. Arrows streak backward into the Mongol vanguard. Horses scream. Men fall. The Mongols laugh. This is what prey does when it's cornered. Kitbuka orders the full advance. This is the first false ending. Because from the Mongol perspective, the trap has already closed. They believe they have won. But then something happens that makes a few veterans uneasy. The Mamluks don't scatter. They pull away. Still controlled. Still disciplined. Baybars gives the signal. The Mamluk cavalry breaks contact and vanishes over the far ridge. And now, the Mongols are alone in the valley. The horns sound again. This time, not Mongol. Mamluk. From the hills. From the flanks. From behind. Steel flashes in the sun as thousands of hidden Mamluk cavalry explode into motion. The valley erupts. Arrows rain down from every direction. Horses rear and collide. Men shout orders that vanish in the noise. For the first time in decades, the Mongols are surrounded. Not encircled slowly. Not trapped by chance. Deliberately. Kitbuka reacts instantly. He orders his men to form defensive groups. To punch through. This is where Mongol discipline saves them, at first. They fight back. Hard. Arrows snap through armor. Swords bite. Maces crush bone. The valley becomes a killing ground. Blood soaks into the dust, turning it into dark mud under hooves. You can smell iron in the air. Sweat. Fear. And now comes the part no one talks about enough. The Mongols don't break. Not yet. They fight like men who refuse to believe reality. Kitbuka rides along the line, shouting, striking, pulling wounded men back into formation. He is calm. Focused. This is not panic. This is resistance. And for a moment, just a moment, it looks like the Mongols might still punch their way out. Baybars sees it. Kutuz sees it. This is the turning point. If the Mongols escape the valley intact, they will regroup, adapt, and return stronger. There will be no second ambush. Kutuz makes a decision that historians still argue about. He commits the reserve. This is everything. No fallback. No safety net. If this fails, Egypt falls. Qutuz rides forward himself. He tears off his helmet, so his men can see his face, so they know he is not hiding. He shouts a single phrase again and again. Wa Islama. Oh, Islam. It's not a command. It's a cry of desperation, of identity, of survival. And it works. Mamluk morale surges like a wave. They crash into the Mongol formations with renewed fury. Axes bite into shoulders. Spears punch through mail. Men are dragged from horses and finished in the dirt. And then, disaster. Baybar's wing takes heavy losses. A Mongol counterattack slams into them with terrifying force. Horses collide at full speed. Men are crushed under hooves. The Mamluk line buckles. For a heartbeat. It looks like the Mongols will split the army in half. This is the lowest point. Some Mamluks begin to fall back. The Mongols push harder. Kitbuka sees the opening. He commits everything. This is his moment. And then, the ground changes. The valley floor narrows. The terrain breaks up. The Mongols lose momentum. Their formations tangle. Baybars rallies his men, shouting, striking his own shield with his sword. They hold. Barely. Now comes the forgotten trick. The thing that historians mention, but rarely explain. The Mamluks unleash hand cannons. Crude. Loud. Unreliable. But terrifying. Thunder cracks across the valley. Smoke erupts. Horses panic. This isn't about killing. It's about shock. The Mongol horses, trained for arrows, screams, steel, have never heard this sound. Some rear. Some bolt. Formations break. And in warfare, formation is everything. Qutuz sees it. He orders the final push. This is no longer a battle. This is slaughter. Mamluks surge forward, hacking, stabbing, screaming. The Mongols fight to the end. Kitbuka refuses to retreat. He is surrounded, captured, dragged from his horse. And here is the moment we began with. Kitbuka is brought before Qutuz. He is defiant. He tells Qutuz the Mongols will return. That this victory means nothing. Qutuz listens. Then orders his execution. The sword falls. The Mongol general's head hits the dirt. And something invisible, but enormous, shatters. The myth of Mongol invincibility dies with him. But don't misunderstand. This is not the end. Because what happens after the battle is almost as important as the battle itself. And what history quietly buried is even darker. Stay with me. Because in the next part, you're going to see what victory really cost. Why the heroes didn't live happily ever after. And how betrayal arrived before the blood even dried. This war isn't finished yet. Part 3 of 5 ***. You would think this is where the story ends. The Mongols are beaten. Their general is dead. The impossible has happened. Cue relief. Cue celebration. Cue history turning the page. But history doesn't turn pages cleanly. It bleeds through them. Because victory at Ain Jalut didn't feel like triumph. It felt like standing in the aftermath of a storm, staring at wreckage, knowing the clouds could still come back. The battlefield is silent now. Not peaceful, silent. The kind of silence that comes when thousands of living things have just stopped making noise at the same time. Bodies lie everywhere. Men face down in the dirt. Horses tangled together, legs broken, eyes glassy. Shields split. Arrows sticking out of flesh at impossible angles. The smell is overwhelming. Blood. Sweat. Bowels released in death. And something else. Burned powder from the hand cannons, still hanging in the air like a ghost. Mamluk soldiers walk among the dead, stunned. Some laugh hysterically. Some vomit. Some drop to their knees and cry without knowing why. Because for the first time in their lives, they lived. Now listen carefully. This is where history usually lies to you. Most accounts rush past what happens next, because it doesn't fit the clean hero defeats villain narrative. But if you really want to understand Ain Jalut, if you want the real story, you have to stay in the dirt with these men. Because victory has consequences. And sometimes, the deadliest enemy appears after the battle is won. Let's talk about Qutuz, Sultan of Egypt, savior of the Islamic world, a man who stood against the Mongols and lived. Right now, he should be untouchable. But power doesn't work like that. Qutuz knows something most of his men don't yet. The Mongols are wounded, not destroyed. Their empire still stretches from China to Persia. Their armies are still massive. This victory bought time. Nothing more. And time is dangerous. Because while the Mongols regroup, Egypt is already starting to fracture from within. The Mamluk system is built on violence. Slaves rise to power through skill, loyalty, and ruthlessness. There are no dynasties, no divine rights, only strength. And Qutuz just proved his strength. Which means others are already measuring it. Baybars rides beside him as the army marches back. The two men barely speak. They don't need to. Both know the truth. Baybars won the battle tactically. Qutuz claimed the victory politically. And in the Mamluk world, that imbalance is dangerous. Here is the first human story you rarely hear. A Mongol warrior named Togachar, fictionalized in some accounts, but representative of many, was captured alive after the battle. He is young, barely 20. He has never known defeat. He expects torture, execution. Instead, he is interrogated. When asked how it feels to lose, he reportedly says nothing. He just stares. Because in his world, losing doesn't exist. This defeat doesn't just kill men. It shatters an entire worldview. Some Mongols flee north. Some are hunted down. Others melt into the countryside, becoming bandits, mercenaries, ghosts. The Mongol machine stutters. But it does not stop. Now comes the second false ending. The army returns to Cairo. The people celebrate. There are prayers, feasts, poems written. The Mongols are beaten. Egypt is saved. Except, Qutuz announces something that sends a chill through the ranks. The army will continue north. No rest. No long celebration. He wants to secure Syria. This is smart militarily. And deadly politically. Because his men are exhausted. Wounded. Emotionally spent. And Baybars. Baybars is watching. Baybars believes he was promised Aleppo as a reward. It doesn't happen. Promises in the Mamluk world are fragile things. They exist only as long as power enforces them. And power is shifting. On the road back from Syria, somewhere near the Nile Delta, Qutuz is assassinated, stabbed, cut down by his own men. Baybars becomes Sultan. Let that sink in. The man who saved Egypt from the Mongols does not die in battle. He dies betrayed by the system he ruled. History often paints Baybars as a hero, and he is, but he is also a product of this brutal world. He does not mourn long. He consolidates power immediately. Because he understands something Qutuz never fully did. The Mongols are coming back. And next time, they will not underestimate Egypt. Baybars spends the next years turning Egypt into a fortress, reforming the army, strengthening discipline, fortifying borders. He studies the Mongols obsessively, their logistics, their weaknesses. And here is something critical. The Mongols who fought at Ain Jalut were not the full horde. Hulagu, the great Mongol commander, was forced to withdraw most of his army east due to succession crises. Ain Jalut happens because of timing, because of division, because the Mongol Empire is stretched thin. This does not make the victory meaningless. It makes it fragile star. Baybars knows this. And now let me tell you the third human story. A Mamluk foot soldier named Yusuf. No noble blood. No command. Just a man with a spear. He survives Ain Jalut. He returns home. And for the rest of his life, he cannot sleep properly. He wakes to the sound of hooves that aren't there. He smells blood that no one else can smell. When people ask him about the battle, he doesn't boast. He says only this: "They can bleed." That sentence spreads. It changes how people talk, how they think, how they resist. Because that's the real secret weapon of Ain Jalut. Not cannons. Not terrain. Not tactics alone. It's proof. Proof that the Mongols are mortal. Before Ain Jalut, resistance to the Mongols feels suicidal. After Ain Jalut, it feels possible. And that changes everything. But we are not done yet. Because the Mongols do return. Again and again. They fight Baybars in Syria. They raid. They probe. But something has shifted. They are cautious now. They do not charge blindly. They respect the Mamluks. Fear has entered the equation. And fear is poison to Mongol warfare. Now comes the darkest realization. Ain Jalut does not end Mongol expansion everywhere. China still burns. Russia still suffers. But the Middle East is spared total annihilation. Islamic civilization survives. Trade routes adapt. Europe avoids a southern Mongol invasion. This single battle sends ripples across continents. And yet, most people have never heard of it. Why? Because history is written where power ends up. European histories focus on Europe. Asian histories focus east. Ain Jalut sits in between. A hinge point. Quiet. Understated. Buried. But now, you see it. Now you understand why this battle matters. But there's one last thing. One final truth that almost no one tells you. The Mongols didn't lose because they were weaker. They lost because, for the first time, they were understood. Studied. Anticipated. Outthought. The Mamluks didn't fight harder. They fought smarter. And that should unsettle you. Because it means no power, no matter how dominant, is safe from collapse once its patterns are exposed. In the next part, we're going to pull back even further. We're going to look at what Ain Jalut teaches us about empires, fear, and the psychology of invincibility. And when we're done, you will never look at unstoppable forces the same way again. Stay with me. The most important part is still coming. Part 4 of 5 ***. Let me pull you out of the dust for a moment. Step back from the corpses. From the blood-soaked valley. From the broken lances and screaming horses. Because Ain Jalut is not just a battle. It is a psychological execution. And to understand why it worked, why it had to work, you need to understand something uncomfortable about power. Power doesn't collapse when it is challenged. It collapses when it is exposed star. Before Ain Jalut, the Mongols are not just feared. They are believed in star. That belief is their greatest weapon. Entire cities surrender without a fight because they know resistance is pointless. Armies melt away because they assume defeat is inevitable. This is not military dominance alone. This is psychological domination. And psychology has rules. One of them is this. The moment people see the monster bleed, the spell breaks. Ain Jalut is not the bloodiest battle the Mongols ever fought. Not even close. But it is the first time the world watches them lose, and live to tell the story. Now think about Baybars again. By the time he becomes Sultan, he is not ruling from triumph. He is ruling from paranoia. Because he understands something terrifying. If the Mongols can be beaten once, they can adapt. And Mongol adaptation is lethal. So Baybars does not wait. He builds a state around one singular idea. Never let the enemy dictate the fight. He reforms the Mamluk army into a standing force that trains constantly, not seasonally. He rotates units. He drills feigned retreats, counter-ambushes, rapid redeployments. He does something radical for the medieval world. He institutionalizes ** learning star. Battle reports are studied. Failures are analyzed. Successes are replicated. This is not medieval romantic warfare. This is cold, modern thinking centuries ahead of its time. And it works. Over the next years, Mongol invasions into Syria fail again and again. Not always catastrophically, but consistently. And consistency kills momentum. Now here's a truth most popular histories avoid. The Mongols do not stop expanding because they suddenly become weak. They stop expanding west because the cost becomes too high. The return on terror diminishes. Fear no longer clears the path. Every advance now requires real fighting, real losses. And the Mongols, contrary to myth, are not infinite. They rely on elite horsemen raised from childhood. You can't replace those overnight. Ain Jalut marks the moment the Mongol war machine begins to feel friction. And friction destroys empires. But let's go deeper. Because the secret weapon of Ain Jalut isn't just tactics or timing. It's asterisk roll reversal star. For the first time, the Mongols experience something unfamiliar. Being hunted. Think about that. For decades, they are the pursuers. The wolves. At Ain Jalut, they are lured. Trapped. Surrounded. Psychologically, this is devastating. One Mongol chronicler later writes, years later, that the sky darkened not with arrows, but with doubt. That line matters. Because doubt is poison to Mongol warfare. Their doctrine depends on absolute confidence. Split-second decisions. Aggressive initiative. Total commitment. Once doubt enters, hesitation follows. And hesitation gets men killed. Now comes the third false ending. After Baybars secures power, after Mongol raids are repelled, after Syria stabilizes, it looks like the story is over. The Mongols fade westward. History marches on. But wait. Because Ain Jalut doesn't just change the Mongols. It changes asterisk everyone else star. European powers begin hearing whispers. Merchants carry stories along trade routes. Not rumors. Specifics. They used fake retreats. They trapped them in a valley. They killed a Mongol general. This information spreads. And suddenly, the Mongols are no longer an unknowable horror. They are a system. And systems can be studied. In Eastern Europe, some commanders begin adjusting tactics. In Anatolia, fortifications are redesigned. No one copies Ain Jalut perfectly. But everyone learns from it. This is how military revolutions actually happen. Not through genius alone, but through asterisk shared realization star. Now let me tell you another human story. This one is quiet. A Syrian woman named Fatima, again, representative rather than singular, lives near Damascus. She survives Mongol occupation before Ain Jalut. She sees neighbors disappear. She hears screams at night. After Ain Jalut, Mongol patrols retreat. Fear recedes. Life does not become peaceful, but it becomes survivable. Years later, she tells her children. There was a day the world stopped ending. That's what Ain Jalut means to civilians. Not glory. Relief. Now let's confront the myth head-on. Was Ain Jalut the single reason the Mongols stopped expanding? No. History is never that clean. But was it the asterisk psychological breaking point asterisk? Yes. Because empires do not fall when they lose land. They fall when they lose inevitability. Before Ain Jalut, Mongol victory feels unavoidable. After Ain Jalut, it feels conditional. And once victory becomes conditional, resistance becomes rational. Now think about modern parallels. You don't need armies for this lesson to apply. Any dominant power, political, military, cultural, relies on belief. The belief that resistance is futile. Once that belief breaks, everything changes. That's why Ain Jalut is so dangerous to dominant narratives. It proves that the strongest force in the world can be undone not by matching its strength, but by understanding its mind. Now let's return to the valley one last time. Long after the bodies are buried, long after the weapons are rusted, Ain Jalut remains quiet. No great monuments. No massive ruins. Just land. But the land remembers. Because in that valley, for the first time in recorded history, the Mongol horde was not just defeated. It was outplayed star. And that distinction matters. Because you can recover from defeat. Recover from losses. Recover from mistakes. But being outplayed? That lingers. That haunts. In the final part, we're going to close this story the right way. Not with dates or footnotes, but with meaning. We're going to talk about what Ain Jalut teaches you about fear, power, and why history hides moments like this. And when we're done, you'll understand something most people never will. You'll understand why knowing this story puts you in the 1%. Stay with me. This is where it all comes together. Part 5 of 5 ***. Now we arrive at the end. Not the end of the battle. Not the end of the war. But the end of the illusion. Because Ain Jalut is not remembered the way it should be. There are no towering statues. No epic poems everyone knows by heart. No popular movies that retell it again and again. And that alone should make you suspicious. History is loud about victories that confirm what we already believe. It is quiet about victories that contradict the myth of inevitability. Ain Jalut contradicts everything people think they know about power. So let's strip this down to its bones. The Mongols were not defeated by superior numbers. They were not defeated by better weapons. They were not defeated because they were tired or unlucky. They were defeated because, for the first time, someone refused to play the role the Mongols had written for them. Everyone else had reacted. The Mamluks acted star. Everyone else feared. The Mamluks studied star. Everyone else believed the Mongols were destiny. The Mamluks treated them like men. And that is the secret weapon history rarely names. Cognitive defiance. The refusal to accept inevitability. Think about how dangerous that is. Not just to empires, but to ideas. Because once someone proves the impossible is possible, the impossible loses its power. That is why Ain Jalut matters more than battles with bigger numbers or grander sieges. It is the moment the spell breaks. Now I want you to imagine something. You are a Mongol warrior years later. You are riding west again. The land looks familiar. But the people don't run like they used to. Some retreat, but not blindly. Some stand. Some law. Some wait. And in the back of your mind, no matter how disciplined you are, there is a thought you cannot erase. We can lose. That thought alone changes everything. That is why Mongol commanders become more cautious. Why they probe instead of charge. Why they hesitate instead of commit. And hesitation, for an army built on momentum, is fatal. Now look at Baybars one last time. History often glorifies him as a heroic sultan. But the truth is darker, and more impressive. Baybars does not believe in happy endings. He does not believe the Mongols are gone. He believes they are watching, learning, waiting. So he never lets Egypt relax. He fortifies. He drills. He strikes preemptively. He builds alliances and breaks them when needed. He becomes exactly the kind of ruler the Mongols themselves respect. Ruthless. Adaptive. Unsentimental. And because of that, the Mongols never break Egypt. Not in his lifetime. Now here is the final, uncomfortable truth. Ain Jalut is not inspiring because it is clean or noble. It is inspiring because it is real star. It shows you that survival does not belong to the pure or the brave alone. It belongs to those willing to understand their enemy better than the enemy understands themselves. That lesson echoes through history. You see it again and again. In empires that collapse because they believe their own myths. In armies that lose because they assume fear will always do the work for them. In powers that mistake reputation for permanence. And now, you know this story. Not the simplified version. Not the footnote. The real one. You know that the Mongol horde did not meet its match in raw force. But in awareness. You know that a valley most people have never heard of quietly saved an entire civilization from annihilation. You know that history did not change because of destiny, but because a group of former slaves looked at the most terrifying power on earth and said, "No," and meant it. That knowledge matters, because it puts you ahead of the myth, ahead of the illusion that power is permanent, ahead of the lie that the strongest always win. You now know the real story, the 199% of people will never hear. And once you've seen behind the curtain, you never unsee it. That is the true legacy of Ain Jalut. Not victory, awakening. And history has never forgiven it for that.